Presented by Crown Royal. Please drink responsibly.
There are playoff games in the NFL. There are play-in games. There are play-out games. Last night was a play-on game for the Dolphins. Why things, though, could still be looking up, even at 3-6. The news of the day, Courtney Cronin's here with the latest on the Bears, a firing in-house. And this from when Ole Miss stormed Georgia. The Bulldog on the field with a friend after the team lost. Is there any explanation for this? We'll go around the horn.
Short answer, no.
Not a great look.
Mark called his guy an idiot.
Come on, Pope.
For that. Not my words, his words.
We'll start with the news of the day from Chicago. The Bears firing offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. I know this because you reported it, Courtney Cronin. More. A move has been wondered through 3-game losing streak and Caleb Williams and the offense going backwards. But I want to get your take, Courtney, on the additional reporting from Mark Silverman, ESPN Chicago. A number of players approached Matt Eberflus asking for this move, and that also a number of veteran players requesting Caleb Williams to sit and Tyson Bagent to start. Courtney Cronin, what are you hearing? Around the horn to you.
Tony, the reason that this had to happen is because Caleb Williams' regression over the last 3 games clearly spelled the end of Shane Waldron's tenure in Chicago. And there have been a lot of frustrations expressed by players. We've heard it for weeks since the Hail Mary game. And then beyond that, when the offense couldn't get anything going in Arizona, and then what happened this past weekend against the New England Patriots. This is an offense that is underperforming, is underutilizing its top skill players, and is one of the least efficient in the NFL. Like DJ Moore, week 5, 2 touchdowns, haven't seen him since. Same thing with Keenan Allen. After week 6, Cole Kmet and Caleb Williams have the highest completion percentage between them for a quarterback tight end combination with at least 25 targets, and Cole is not being utilized in this offense. Like very clearly, people inside Halas Hall, from the coaching staff to the players, are frustrated with the way that things are going offensively. But this isn't just a Shane Waldron problem or an offensive problem that's going to be fixed necessarily throughout the rest of the season. This is a Matt Eberflus problem. He's 14-29 as the head coach of the Chicago Bears over 2.5 seasons. He has now fired 2 offensive coordinators in the same calendar year. He was so proud of this process that led him to Shane Waldron talking about the communication element and how he teaches things to players. And then yesterday, when he was asked about the biggest issues that he alluded to would need to change, he talked about the in-game communication. So in the short term, this gets mitigated, I guess, Thomas Brown becoming the play caller, but long term, this is an Eberflus problem he can no longer run away
But one follow-up, that's a huge headline, again, from Sylvie, that veteran players are maybe wondering if Caleb Williams should go to the bench for a bit. Is that what you're hearing?
Well, I'll say this. They have emboldened players. They have the 8 captains. 4 of them are on the offense, one of whom is Caleb Williams. These players' voices carry a lot of weight inside Halas Hall. And we'll find out soon. Matt Eberflus said that there will be no switch at quarterback. If it will remain Caleb Williams going forward. But we'll find out soon how players end up reacting to the change in offensive coordinator and those voices that are being reported, if that stuff ends up getting
All
quieted.
right, Tim Kalishaw, around the horn to you on whether this move fixes the Bears' woes.
Well, it doesn't fix it, Tony. I've been doing this a few years, and I can safely say offensive coordinator is the number 1 fall guy in sports. A lot easier to get rid of than a head coach or a quarterback, and it happens a lot. Now, that's not to say they shouldn't have done it. I think it sends the right message. The Bears acknowledge we stumbled into, through the Carolina trade, the best quarterback in the draft. We did not prepare a good enough foundation all across the board. That includes on the coaching staff. So you can start there. It doesn't fix the fact they've got injuries all over the offensive line. New England was blitzing, and they weren't picking up any of it. They've got to deal with that the rest of the year. I still think it would be wise to have Caleb Williams sit a few games.
Okay, so you do think maybe some time on the bench just to take it all in would be something that would be good for Caleb Williams. George Sedano, I turn to you. Here's some points. You maybe foresaw this at the start of the season, so there you go. Please, floor is yours.
To quote the great Denny Green, the Bears are who we thought they were, Tony, okay? When you look at this, and let's start. Hold on a second. I need to stretch for a second. Yeah, early in this season, you guys asked the question, who has the better infrastructure around them? Some semblance of that conversation between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. And I specifically said, there's no way it's the Bears. You got a defensive coach in Matt Eberflus. You got a guy in Shane Waldron who in Seattle got passed over eventually got passed by who was his quarterback's coach, who eventually became a head coach in Carolina. It goes to show you there was plenty of other issues along the way, too, with players even complaining about him openly on a podcast, not realizing they were on the air, but then deciding to lean into it once they were on the air. This thing spelled disaster from the beginning. And look, that doesn't absolve Caleb by any stretch of the imagination. Caleb is holding on to the ball way too long despite a bad offensive line and no real run game. He's throwing across his body. He's trying to do all the stuff he did at USC, and you just can't do that stuff in the NFL. But yes, this is a big problem for the Bears, and it's not going to end with just Shane Waldron.
Okay, but to follow up on Tim, do you think some time on the bench would be good for Caleb Williams and the Bears?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes. Look, Tua Tagovailoa had to go to the bench a number of times under Brian Flores because Brian Flores wanted to try to win games and make sure the veterans were happy. He did it with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Tua didn't love that, but I do think Tua was better for it.
Frank Isola, can you start there?
Gentlemen, you might be missing the news of the day. They just changed offensive coordinators. You don't change your offensive coordinator and then bench the starting quarterback. That's not going to happen. I think a lot of this goes back to Jaden Daniels. Number one, did they pick the right quarterback? That remains to be seen. Who threw the Hail Mary pass? And the Bears have been reeling since that moment. This is clearly the head coach knows he's in trouble. So like Tim mentioned, you know, the offense coordinator, defensive coordinator, they're like the hitting coach in baseball. You throw them aside when things aren't going well. They gave up 9 sacks in the last game. What great plays is he drawing up that aren't working when your quarterback is constantly on the ground? He's been sacked, 18, 19 times in the last 3 games. He's 9 games into his career. This isn't year 3. You want to talk about a panic move? It all goes back to the head coach because he knows he's in trouble.
Understandably. You answered whether they would bench him, and you don't think they're going to. But should they? Would it be good for Caleb Williams to take some time and just take it all in?
You know what? I'm not going to do that just yet. They made the big move. They're 4-5. And hopefully it's nobody on defense complaining about the coach getting the quarterback getting switched. You guys are the ones on defense when Daniels threw that Hail Mary. So I don't want to hear players assigning blame. He's 9 games into it. They decided to go with this guy. I'm sticking with him. The season is not over yet.
Tony Cronin, last word on this.
I want to go back to what George said when the breadcrumbs have been there all along, whether it was Jackson Smith and Jigba at the Super Bowl, not really offering any glowing praise about Shane Waldron, to Mercedes Lewis telling us earlier this year that several players went to Waldron and said, coach us harder. They had 9 offensive coordinator candidates this past offseason. Liam Cohen, who's coaching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cliff Kingsbury, we've talked about ad nauseum. Zach Robinson, Greg Roman. Like, they could have had a lot of other voices in this position to get this job, but Matt Eberflus went with Shane Waldron, and ultimately that falls on him.
We've been Horn. We'll move on to last night. Dolphins' chances of a wild card spot jumping up to 13% with the 8-point win over the Rams. They never trailed. They finished strong, unlike the last couple of weeks. 3-6 is the 10th seed in the AFC, though. The Rams, same 10th seed, despite the loss, 4-5, and off-putting offensive output. No touchdowns. Biggest takeaway from last night's game around the Horn, George Sedano.
The biggest takeaway is we still got a chance, Tony. If you're the Miami Dolphins, you've got 2 winnable games in front of you. And then from that point on, it looks like their offense, little by little, is starting to look more like the offense we saw last season. Now, they're not the explosive team just yet, but again, Tua is just coming back into the fold here. So I do think that things could be spun a little more positively for them. For the Rams, they had the momentum. They really kind of shot themselves in the foot here because they didn't have a lot of room for error either on their side. They now have, I believe, single-digit percentages chances to win their division, and they've already got the teams in the division, so it doesn't help them in a lot of cases. I think these 2 teams have outside chances. I don't love their chances to make the playoffs, but they're still in it, is what I would say.
Isola?
Yeah, to me, neither team is impressive. For the Rams, no touchdowns for them. And I give the one thing that impressed me about the Dolphins, though, was their defense. You know, no touchdowns for the Rams. You pressured Stafford 13 times. You got 4 sacks. So we're all waiting for Miami's offense to finally do something. They won this because of their defense. And if you do that, if your defense could play like that, you're going to be in games.
Courtney Cronin?
They desperately needed to snap the losing streak, and to see where Tua is in his return from the concussion, I think, is a promising sign. He's still showing some questionable decisions, I think we could call it, with his pocket awareness. But even when he faced adversity in that second quarter stretch, where it was the back-to-back drives with the interception and the fumble, he was able to extend drives. Every time they got into Rams territory, they put points on the board. He was responsible for 5 third downs, too. And the touchdown, he's not making the best decisions by and large, and he's doing too much. Even his head coach said that with some of those untimely sacks. But overall, a promising sign that he's getting back in the right direction.
Tim Kalishaw.
I know George thinks that the Dolphins are still alive because they're just chasing Denver and the Colts for that last wild card. And that doesn't sound like a bad way to go in Cincinnati. But when you're 3-6, I just think you've lost any wiggle room. I think the Rams still have a sliver of a chance playing in a bad division where nobody, including San Francisco, nobody's going to run away with it. But that's going to be a bad loss for them when they look at it.
Offensively, things were clicking over the last month. It looked like, where did it go, George?
Look, Tone, I think with the Dolphins, to me, it's getting Siegler back. I think that was big for them defensively, Javon Holland. But for the Rams, again, their offense, they shot themselves in the foot a lot. It wasn't necessarily just about the Dolphins. I mean, Matthew Stafford, this is only his second game in about 50 games with the Rams that they haven't scored a touchdown. They really had a lot of self-inflicted wounds.
Taking a break here, buy or sell on the other side. It's buy or sell. Check out this Donovan Mitchell 360-degree layup. Beautiful. Man. Mitchell had 36. Season high. Cavaliers, 6-point win over Chicago. And now 12-0, the 6th longest streak to start an NBA season. On how Cleveland is doing this and what it means around the horn, George Sedano.
All right, let's start with the positives, Tony. The positives, I think Kenny Atkinson has done a really good job just kind of fostering a really good environment where everybody is playing really well. I think Evan Mobley particularly has taken another step. He fits into what they're trying to do. His three-point shot is falling at a better clip, certainly this year. This is a guy who was compared to Chris Bosh in the draft process. Defensively, he's fantastic. Offensively, he's becoming better. But here's the slight negative. They have the 24th strength of schedule to this point in the season, so they have had some easy opponents to start.
Tim Kalishaw.
Glad we got the negatives out there from George Sedano on a 12-0 team. They lead the NBA in field goal percentage. They lead the NBA in three-point percentage.
The truth.
Anytime Mitchell and Allen and Mobley have all been healthy, they've been pretty good. We tend to reduce the East to the Celtics, Knicks, Sixers, and Heat, and forget that these other teams even exist. Cleveland exists.
Well, last week you gave us Orlando as a top 4 team. Do you believe Cleveland is even higher than top 4? Let's call them top 2.
Of course they are. And so is Indiana. All 3 of them are.
3 teams are top 2? You lost me there. Courtney Cronin, around the horn to you.
Let's give Darius Garland his flowers, because what he did last night, final minutes of a game that I was at, happened in Chicago, one of those lowly teams in the Eastern Conference
the
that
only
George wants to talk
there.
about.
I was there.
You know, the layup with 24 seconds, the 4 steals, a career high. He's been playing some great ball, but this core has been together now for 3 years. Whether it's Garland, Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, they're gelling because they've had so much experience with each other. And the 5-0 in clutch time games, yes, I understand it happened against the lowly Chicago Bulls last night. The way that they're able to finish these games after it got pretty close, I think, is indicative of a team that is firing on all cylinders.
Frank Sola.
Well, Courtney, the Cavs have what your Bears don't have, and that's offense. They've scored at least 110 points in every game. They've gone over 131 in 5 of those games. And if they're healthy, you look at that team. Last night, Donovan Mitchell from the mean streets of Greenwich Country Day School, and he scored 36. 3 players off the bench combined to score 36. They have something going. By the way, they can remain undefeated for another 3 games. They will play the Celtics.
That's what I want. That's what I want. Thank you for looking
game.
forward like that. There's an odd little thing that goes on with these longest win streaks in NBA history. The vast majority didn't win the championship. They got to the finals, but didn't. But I'm sure that's What are you trying to get to with the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut?
I
Frank?
love Donovan Mitchell. I've already teased him
we're
about
not
that.
here
He
for this.
enjoyed
We're
it.
not here for that.
He got a kick out.
Buy or sell 2 tonight. 2 returns. I want to get your perspective on Klay Thompson returning to Golden State for the first time. Here's how amped Klay Thompson is.
Be good to see people that you grinded with, obviously, but to me, it's just another regular season game in November.
Dubs will be giving out the captain's hat for Klay Thompson. Fans will love that. And also another return to the court tonight. Joel Embiid making his long-awaited season debut for Philadelphia. Tim, which return is bigger and the one we'll be talking about tomorrow?
Joel Embiid was going to come back at some point. That's not a big deal. Think of 12 years ago, you first started watching the Splash Brothers and wondered what the ceiling for these 2 3-point shooting guards could be and what Klay and Steph Curry accomplished. It's very cool to see him going back there, even if he just left.
Courtney Cronin?
We're not going to be talking about any T-shirt giveaways for Joel Embiid on his first game of the season because he'll probably be sitting out tomorrow or whenever they play next. But for Klay Thompson, this means something, going back to the place that built him into one of the best shooters that we know, that we've got to witness. And I think it's going to be closure for Klay because he's kind of dodged these questions about what did it mean to leave, what does it mean to restart your career on a team where you're second in scoring right now through the first 4 weeks. I think it's going to be more emotional. It'll hit him when he sees that tribute video tonight at Chase Center.
Frank, let me ask it to you that way. How did you hear Klay Thompson in that soundbite we just played for you?
No. He's in denial. He'll get emotional.
Yeah,
Here's the
I
thing,
think
too.
so,
The
too.
Warriors have actually, they haven't skipped a beat since he left. So for me, the pregame for Klay will be interesting, but you got to love Tim. Oh, you knew Embiid was going to come back. Oh, really? You knew that he was going to come back, Tim. That's the issue, that the guy hasn't been playing. So the last time he played an NBA game was against the Knicks. He had some dominant performances, but this is going to be a big night. The Sixers are struggling. The Knicks are struggling. This will be interesting in Philadelphia.
All right, and George Sedano.
Tone, the Sixers are going to be fine once they get healthy, but this is about Klay. And look, Klay was very hurt. I was around there a ton over the last couple of years. He was very hurt that he was not rewarded with the contract that he thought was requisite of what his accomplishments were there. So I think there's that. It wasn't fun the last year or so around him there because of that, but I do think it will absolutely hit him once those fans, engulf him with the emotion.
You're not hearing
because they love him
bitterness there. You're hearing a reality that it didn't end the way he wanted, but tonight you see him as being somebody who's going to
add a big man, and I think they will explore potentially adding someone, but it's not going to be anyone that's going to make a major difference this season. From everything you look at the Thunder over the last 3-4 years, they've leaned into small ball. They've been all about playing smaller, versatile lineups with all these defenders on the court. They went all in on that this summer too, getting Alex Caruso. So I think they're going to lean more and more into playing this small ball lineup. We saw Jalen Williams, J-Dub was guarding Ivica Zubac last night, and it's important to know they do have 3 amazing centers, I think, on this team. You think about Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren. They love Jalen Williams down there too, the other Jalen. And I think in the meantime, you lean into small ball and just wait for those guys to get back in the lineup. But they're a team that's always going to be very interested in seeing what else is out there, but they're going to lean into what they have internally, which is a lot of small ball.
And Hartenstein's still a couple of weeks away, right?
Yeah, he's still got a couple weeks left on his reevaluation.
Okay, so while they're making all of these reevaluations, Shanae, it seems like these are some guys who play above their size in a way. Can Oklahoma City make this work without their bigs available?
They can on both ends. Offensively, the way small ball works, it helps when you have SGA dropping 45, so they're covered. But defensively, you're able to be versatile. They're the #1 defense in the NBA. And if you look at these plays, I love it here. Here, they're going to trap the system, James Harden. And what happens? Lou Dort is free safety. And then they have a switch on the backside where you zone up, where J-Dub does size to the rim and Isaiah Joe swaps out. And you see it. They're able to force a turnover. And on another play, that was a double. This time, they're not going to do that. They're going to switch again. They're going to switch here. And instead of the short roll, when you see it, they're going to size up. And there's a short roll. They zoned up the back line, and they're able to respond and not overreact and be there to, again, force another turnover. So whether it's the double team or the switch, they move as a unit and they convert it to offense. And what I love is, and look at this number right here, the graphic, they forced 24 turnovers, the team second most in a game this season. This is the team that's #1 in defense and #1 in forced turnovers, over 20 a game. So when you can rely on that defense and then you get that type of production from SGA, the boys, they're going to be all right. They're going to be all right.
I love it. Not only #1 in defensive efficiency, but #1 in blocks, which may change because Chet is out, but they're #1 in steals and deflections. More minutes for Alex Caruso. I love it. Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort. These guys that get active, they can play the small ball lineup like Golden State did some years ago when they had the death lineup with Iggy at the 5. So this is something similar, and I think they'll be very active and it'll be efficient.
You guys are making OKC fans feel pretty good. They play mismatches well, Perk.
Yeah, they do. I mean, obviously being scrappy, being some dogs. They still gave up a lot of points to the Clippers last night, right? Norman Powell still had it his way. So I think this is going to help them more offensively. Like, we're going to see a more explosive SGA. He's going to be putting up big numbers. He has to, especially with filling that void or that gap with missing Chet Holmgren. But this team is going to be just fine. They're disciplined. And look, Chet Holmgren is going to come back, right, into what Sham said, 2 months.
Right.
I got to give a lot of credit to the medical staff down there in Oklahoma City. I'm telling you, this is one of the best in the NBA. The way that they go about it, led by my guy, Donnie Strack, who's down there, who's been there forever. He's going to come back. He's going to be better than ever. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein is coming back in like 10 to 14 days, right?
Right. So the vibes are high, it seems, in Oklahoma City. If this were to happen to any team, we seem to feel the best about this as we possibly could. All right, let's take a look. Wednesday's star-studded doubleheader, though. Brandon Ingram and the Pelicans. Hopefully, BI's still good to go in that one. Taking on SGA and the Thunder at 7:30 Eastern. Then out to L.A. for LeBron and Anthony Davis hosting the Grizzlies. We're going to be, speaking of Chase Center, we have two of our best reporters there now who are covering the same game, Kendra Andrews, Tim McMahon. I want to start with you on this one, Kendra. What specifically are you hearing in terms of the tribute that the Warriors have planned for Klay Thompson tonight?
Well, Malika, the Warriors are tributing him in a way that they say has never been done before in the NBA. Klay will be the 5th Dallas starter announced, and right before his introduction, there will be a minute-long tribute video. And I was told, look, we could have put together a 30-minute video, but 60 seconds is all that the NBA would allow for. After that video, Malika, is what you were talking about last week, the salute to the captain. 18,000 sailor hats will be passed out to fans, and at the conclusion of the video, the Warriors want everyone to tip their cap to Klay Thompson. After that, there's more. Stephen Curry will take center court to say a few words, address his former Splash brother, and then the game will tip off. And Malika, when that happens, all of the pleasantries, they go out the window. The Warriors, they've kept their emotions in check when talking about Klay's return, but back in October, Stephen Curry told our Young Masuk, look, it's going to be war. And Draymond Green said, I'm going to run through his chest, explaining that when they have this level of brotherhood, they want to play him even harder than if it's just a regular opponent.
Yeah, so you're going from feeling warm and fuzzy to, all right, and now we've stepped between the lines, and I would imagine Klay Thompson feels similarly. Kendra, I'm glad we both got the plaid memo today, sis. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game. Let's take a look at this. Thompson, he's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time in Warriors franchise history here. He's made the 2nd most threes, won the 3rd most games, scored the 6th most points for Golden State over his tenure with the Bay Area with the Golden State Warriors. So that's the Warriors side of all this, Tim. Let's focus on the Mavericks side now. How do you expect, given all that we just heard from Kendra, Klay Thompson to react to everything Golden State has planned?
I mean, the Warriors are obviously feeling all sorts of warm fuzzies. I'm not so sure that Klay Thompson is right now. If he is, he certainly doesn't want to show it. I mean, he is stoic. You know, the other night after the Mavericks loss in Denver, he said this is just another regular season game in November. Then he corrected himself, admitted, yeah, it does mean a little bit more because it's the NBA Cup opener. I mean, really? Are you buying that, Malika? I asked Kyrie if he's buying that, and Kyrie says, sounds about right for a guy trying to downplay everything that he's going into. And, you know, Kyrie said, look, we understand the emotions. We understand the heaviness of this. He wants Klay to receive all the love, you know, see the flowers that he's being given. But Klay Thompson, one, I think, wants to focus much more on being starter for what they hope to be a contender Klay Thompson, not former Warrior Klay Thompson. And he just, it'll be interesting to see if he cracks it all during the ceremony. But he wants to be very focused, very locked in, and so far that's meant very stoic about this whole thing.
Yeah, I think going into the game, that makes all the sense in the world. I am curious, Tim, once he sees the tribute video, sees the rims, the nets that he knows so very well, if that is going to change at all. But I certainly am going to be